lot of bands would have been discouraged and given up at that point. But I knew a booking agent in New York, and I started bugging him to the point of he finally succumbed and said, okay, man, I'll give you guys some dates. And what this guy gave us was perfect. All the West Coast dates opening for Foghat right before Christmas. And those were really good gigs. Come on, nobody's in a bad mood at Christmas. They love Foghat, blah, blah, blah. As long as we got on the stage and did our stuff and got the hell out of there quick, they're going to love us. Okay. So the first night, we traveled down to San Diego to this club called the Bacchanal. We get up there and we do our set, and we're way too loud. Louder than usual. We're just completely excited, and we can't believe what's happening, and we're just like cranking. So we get off the stage, and we walk backstage, and we're in our dressing room, and we're kind of catching our breaths and having a drink and just chilling and saying, that was awesome, yeah, that was great. And all of a sudden, the door bursts open, and it's Foghat's road manager, this old English craggly guy. And he comes in and he kind of shuts the door brisk behind him. He says, what was that? That was the most disrespectful sale I've ever seen for an opening band for us. And we're like, uh-oh. And our heads all went down. And we're like, oh, what did we do? He says, you're playing too fucking loud. Do that again, you'll be going home soon. We were shocked. We thought, oh my God, we've blown it. That was our chance and we've blown it. And then the guy had a heart and he saw that we were completely sorry for our behavior. And he said, listen, boys, you're new. Just turn it down tomorrow night a bit, wouldn't you? I think he was trying not to laugh, and he slipped right back out the door.
You know, bear in mind that like everybody in this band and crew were like super into Foghat. I mean, Foghat Live, what? That was a huge live record, you know. But the minute that they heard us, oh boy, we just put the wrong fish on the boat.
So after San Diego and learning our lesson, we did the next gig, which was in Los Angeles at the Country Club. This was a stage we knew very well. We dropped into our groove. We played real tight. We didn't overdo it. And as we came off stage, Foghat knew that we had pulled our stuff together and we were playing along.
Guys, well, we pull into this place called Lonesome Armadillo. And it was this shit redneck fucking club. We were not the band that you wanted to go to Lonesome Armadillo. But I remember Kelly coming out in his green satin top hat. All these guys, and the minute we opened up the show, all I saw from the back as I'm switching lights was cone heads. And they're not cone heads. They're 10-gallon hats. And we're like, right there I'm going. And Kelly's not even on the stage yet. I'm like, okay, we are fucking doomed.
Getting to the end of the tour, and it was getting close to Christmas. And one of the last gigs was in San Francisco. It was gig time, and we were ready to hit the stage, and we didn't want to waste 1 minute of our set. But the road manager for Foghat came up again, and he says, look, you guys, we got to hang you back just for 1 minute. They had a little problem at the door, and a bunch more people are coming in. That's better for you. Lose one song, and you'll be glad you did. Well, at first we were pissed, but we sure as hell wasn't going to challenge that guy again. So we finally did hit the stage, about 5 or 10 minutes late. But the guy was right. The place was packed. And they were just cheering and hooping and hollering. They wanted to rock, and they wanted to rock now. So we fired up, and we could do no wrong. It was like the sound was great. The people responded to everything. We did cut a couple of songs, but you know what? That was smart too. It was compact and tight, and the place went nuts. If we weren't the opening act, we could have done an encore easy, but that wasn't going to happen. And everybody's watching Foghat when they finally came out. That place was roaring. So backstage, all the bands were on cloud nine. Everybody was in love with everybody, and we head back to our motel. The last couple of nights we were tired and we pretty much just crashed, and that was that. But this was San Francisco a few days before Christmas, and we were just on it, and we wanted to party. And all these people had followed us back to our rooms. So there was 3 rooms, and the first room had all the beer in it for some reason. And Nick takes a bedspread and he puts it on the floor, and he starts going to the ice machine. And Nick comes back with all these bags of ice he can barely hold, and he dumps them on the bedspread on the floor. And I go, dude, what are you doing? He goes, oh, I thought the bags would stay together. Well, the bags had broken open and the ice was everywhere. So he just takes the corners of the bedspread and he gets it all into the middle, and he starts laying beers on the ice. And so there's, like 20 or 30 beers icing up on the floor. Anyway, people are grabbing them just as fast as you can put them down anyway. And people are milling in and out of there. A lot of smoking pot, a lot of strange-looking people. It was San Francisco. And then there was the next room. And man, we weren't there, but I don't know, 15, 30 minutes. And there was like an orgy going on in there. And like, I stuck my head in there, and it's like all these people having sex or whatever. And like, Gumby don't roll like that. That's like too weird for me. Can you believe it? Yeah, it is. Anyway, so I bailed on that one. I go to the third room. Of course. It's 1985. It's Cocaine Fest. So I go in there and I'm like, oh my God. Here, Gumby, have a blast. I'm good. So me and Kevin ran into an old friend, and we had the greatest time of all. We took a trip and never left the farm, if you know what I'm saying. It was San Francisco, right? Anyway, I don't remember going to sleep, but I remember waking up one time real late, like maybe 4 in the morning, still dark, and this man and lady had finally had enough of all that mayhem going on, and they left their room screaming and cursing at us. I don't really blame them, but that was bad of management to put them next to us, I think. Anyway, they left and made a big noise, and then finally everybody's rolling out of a zombie sleep, and we had wrecked those rooms. There was a pond in the middle of the first room where the ice had melted, and we took the bedspread and kind of wadded it up and threw that into the bathtub, thinking, yeah, we got it. No, we didn't. It was really, really a lot of water. And we packed up our stuff and headed out of there. Well, it was time to stop and eat.
And we're all sitting at like a fucking IHOP, someplace outside of like, Marysville, California. And so we're all eating pancakes and we're eating our shit. Kelly goes, I'm like, he's sitting right next to me. Directly shoulder to shoulder with me. I'm like, Kelly, you got to get something. He's like, no, dude. He goes, I'm not going to eat on this tour. I'm like, dude, you're not going to fucking do it. I'm not going to have it. She goes, all right, so I'll get a Spanish omelet. Perfect. Spanish omelet. He goes, extra salsa. So the dude stands there, or hands him his fucking omelet with extra salsas. And bear in mind, he's fucking not even 6 inches away from me. Pushes the Spanish omelet away, takes all the salsas and guzzles them down. He goes, hey, dude, I got to keep my weight. I got to be trim for the show. And he walks outside and just goes, whoop, whoop. Robbie. And I walk outside, and it's like Gumby's looking at me, and Darwin's like, dude, what the fuck just happened? He's out in the parking lot just kind of going, dude, that shit was fucking rated X. I'm like, how you gonna sing? He goes, I'm not. I'm like, yeah, guess what? You are gonna sing tonight. So I got him pancakes to go, and he ate them in the back of the truck. But
So we finally get out of that, and we're rolling up to the gig, And the place is called the Saddle Rack. And remember, folks, this is the late 80s, and the cowboy thing was still happening a bit. And sure enough, we got in there, and there was a mechanical bull in the middle of the club. And we knew this was going to be a special gig. Well, by the time we hit the stage, we were so burnt out. But I tried to rally the guys a little bit. Thankfully, I was one of the few that didn't drink. But there was another distraction to come. So we're playing along, doing our set, and these guys decide that they want to see Foghat now. And there's a group of them in the front, and they decide to start flicking little pieces of paper at us. And I'm thinking, man, I've done a lot of gigs, but I've even had people yell at us, but flicking little pieces of paper, but that's what they were doing. So the pieces of paper started getting bigger and bigger, and then a bottle cap comes whizzing up on the stage right by Kelly's head as he's trying to introduce the next song, and it bounces around in the drum kit and pisses Nick off. And Kelly grabbed the mic and he's raged down at those guys, and those guys chilled out. We finished the set and got the hell out of there. So God bless Foghat. That was really our first big break. And it also led to our own first tour. Along the way of those Foghat gigs, I got all the contact information from those clubs, and one by one set them all up for us to come back and headline. And we did. And we did very well until we got to the Bay Area. Well, the first gig in Berkeley, we were all sound checked. It sounded great. We were going to have a great show. And we were all set to go on. Kevin turned on the fog machine and let it run. Well, it looked great, and the lights were flashing and everything was happening. But Kelly forgot during sound check. We warned him a bunch of times.
Right in the middle of the stage, there was this pole. And Kelly comes out, and he comes running out on stage. Dunk! When he ran out on stage, there was so much fog that it smelled like soap. And so he runs out and goes headlong into a pole, and I felt so sorry for that bastard. I was like, me and Kevin were like, dunk! All ass over tea kettle, and we couldn't even see the dude.
So Rob ran out there and got Kelly on his feet. We played a good set. The club manager felt sorry for us. Anyway, we headed to San Jose for our next gig. Now, we got into town late and we just crashed. But in the morning, we went to get some food. And we were always trying to make Kelly eat. And he wouldn't eat. And everybody ordered stuff. And I said, come on, Kelly, get something to eat. And he stared at me and goes, okay, I'll get something. And then he looks at the waitress and he says, give me a really big steak and burn it. Like that. And she goes, okay. So I sit down and goes away. Well, she did. She brought back a steak. And he proceeded to eat it and glaring at me like Hannibal Lecter. And yeah, that was weird. Kelly would cause some worry to us on the road because we didn't think he took care of himself very well. That's all. But he proved us wrong. He was always iron mighty. You know, he was always there on time, always in full costume, and he always put out a good show. So here we are in San Jose. We go and do a great sound check there, and we find out this is like a radio promoted gig, and it's going to be a big deal. And it was like an airplane hangar and could hold like 1,000 people. So we were kind of stoked. And sure enough, that place did fill up. And when we hit the stage, we were tearing it up. At the end of the drum solo, Kelly came prancing out on stage with something that looked like he had a dog on a leash. And as he got closer, I realized it's a high heel shoe. And he's got some sort of makeshift rope pulling it along. He runs up to the mic and he goes, I want you to meet my new pet. And that sounds so dumb, but the crowd went nuts and he held up the shoe. The crowd loved it. That one show was worth all the trouble we had gone through the night before for sure. So we packed up and we're heading down the road to the next gig. And this time we're going to Los Angeles to play the country club. And it's kind of our home turf, so we're kind of excited. And we're a few miles down the road, and me and Nick and a couple of the other roadies are in this van. And Nick is sitting on a crate right behind where they used to put the engine in the old vans. And he's kind of just nodding off a little bit, sleepy. So we stopped to get some food, and we're just getting back on the road, and Nick was, I guess the food knocked him out because he was like asleep. Well, the guy driving said, hey, I got to pull over for a second. And we're like, all right. So they pull over, and the guy that's in the passenger seat, he goes, yeah, I'll go too. So, but when they got out, they both left their doors open for some reason, even though we're pulled off the side of the road and it's fine. Well, a few cars are going by. It's really late at night, though. And then all of a sudden, I look at Darwin behind me, and I say, hey, Dar, watch this. And Nick's totally asleep, and I go, Nick, quick, take the wheel. Nick, take the wheel, quick. And sure enough, Nick breaks right out of his sleep, and he grabs the wheel, and he's steering the van, and he's bobbing left and right. And he realizes, oh, the van's not moving, and he stops, and there's like a pause, and then he turns, and he looks at it, and he goes, you motherfuckers. And me and Darwin are just dying with laughter, and he's just started laughing so hard because it was so funny. We rarely got Nick, but man, we got him that time. And then the other two guys jump back in the van ready to go, and he figures out the rest of the story and why there's two open seats.
One night late, I was able to, stay over at his house because it was so late. Didn't want to drive home because I lived in Playa del Rey and he was in Hollywood or North Hollywood. And anyways, the next morning I woke up, went downstairs and had some, breakfast. Nick came down and he said he was going to go in the shower. And about a minute or two later, there was like this hellish scream from that part of the house from the shower. And his mom, Rose, got up from the table, went over there into the bathroom of the shower, and he wanted to know what was going on. Well, come to find out, he was washing his hair with hair remover or Nair, and because the hair Nair remover looked like the shampoo bottle because they were sitting next to each other in the shower, and the scream was crazy scream. Anyway, so his mom came out and told me, and he finally came out, and he was just beside himself.
We headed on down the road back to LA to play the country club. And it was a good show, but it seemed like it was a death knell too. There was just nowhere for us to go. And almost literally, that was our last show. And we just slowly drifted apart. The record wasn't going to be properly promoted and distributed, and that left us dead in the water. So finally, Rhoads was disbanded, and we started looking at each other, what do you want to do? Well, me and Nick and Dar knew we wanted to go on, and we needed to find a singer that could play the style of music we wanted. And we found this guy named Gary McIntyre, and we called him Gary Mac. And he was very Robert Plant styled, and we were pretty happy about that. We didn't see the drawback of sounding too much like Zeppelin or anything like that at the time, although that was going to be a drawback. So we wrote a bunch of new songs, and we called ourselves The Green. And we went out and did gigs with Gary.
I mean, back in those days, that was the band that they were kind of meant to play. I mean, that's where, like, at that time, they were so focused and so in tune. They kind of read each other's fucking minds. It was a really in sync thing, and it was really awesome, And everybody paid attention. I mean, even the guys that we played with would kind of stand around, but all the guys stood there like this, you're better than me. But guys saw these guys and said, okay, these guys are good. Everybody just fucking played really, really deep. They didn't play for the show. They played for them, and everybody who actually got it, and there was like 3/4 of the people there that were looking at them just like, hey, dude, I don't know what these guys are doing, but I want to fucking take this straight. That's where I want to go. I'm heading where they're going,
not lazy. When he was focused on a project, you really couldn't stop him. He was really intense. He built a giant drum stage for his drum set, modeled after the Queen drum riser we saw. It was amazing. It had all these lights in it, and Rob Schaefer used to operate the lights from behind him. It was awesome. It was an amazing thing. No one had anything like that. All the time. The guy was constantly in motion. Sometimes he would jump up and bash a cymbal. Sometimes he'd just go wild around the kit. And I started noticing every time he did a drum solo, the place went nuts. And so I'm thinking, you know what? Why didn't you just start the set with a drum solo? And at first he thought, you're crazy, man. What are you talking about? But it makes sense. Think about it. You come out on stage, yeah, you did a sound check, but no one has a mix on the first song. This way, Nick comes out, he starts slowly into a drum solo. The sound engineer can dial in the drums as he's doing that, so the time the band is ready, we know the vocalist will sit on top. All he has to do is the basic guitars.
Went down to the Roxy to go see another band and get in there. I get a drink and I was just trying to get out and trying to get to know people and, just trying to go to the clubs and see bands and see what was going on. So I'm hanging out, and I'm watching this next band, like the crew come in and they're setting it up. And these guys bring like this, what looked like a door, right? They bring this door in, they carry it in and they set it down like front of the stage, offset. And I'm like looking down like, what is that? So I couldn't really get up front. It's pretty packed. I walk around to the side. I'm looking at it. I'm like going, it's all effects, right? It's all the stomp boxes. It's the 80s, right? So I'm like, wow, who does that? That's crazy. So next thing you know, the lights go down and the show starts and this guy starts with a drum solo. And I'm like, who starts with a drum solo? About halfway through that drum solo, I'm like, wow, he's pretty good. I mean, he's really good. Well, it ended up being Nick. And I don't know. It was kind of weird and kind of oddball and kind of quirky at the time, but, it worked. I never forgot it. Let's put it that way.
He started really working the crowd. And it might have been only a few minutes or whatever it was, but it really did launch us off every time. Just jack the crowd up. They would hoop and holler, we'd kick into the first song. And things were going along pretty good. And the scene started changing a little bit, and this pay-to-play vibe where the bands were asked to pre-sell tickets before the gig started happening. We weren't too hot on that. And Gary, our singer, was especially against that. But it was getting to be a reality. Well, we got this gig opening for Jane's Addiction, and they were blowing up, and it was basically an album release party for them at the Whiskey. And a couple other bands before us played. But when we set up our stuff, we couldn't set up Nick's whole drum riser, and it was kind of a drag. And he said, hey, that drum riser's not going to make me play any better, and I'm going to bury these guys. And so I said, good attitude, here we go, let's do this. So we tore that place up. We played a really, really good gig. But all of a sudden, we had a couple of songs to go, and the stage manager motions to me to come over to the side of the stage, and he says, hey, one more. And I said, no, man, we have two more. And he goes, you have one more. I go, oh, okay. So I went over to Nick and Dar and Gary, and I said, hey, it's time to do that Zeppelin medley. The guys chuckled because they knew exactly what I was talking about. It's 3 long Zeppelin songs. What Is and What Should Never Be, I Can't Quit You, and finishing up with Heartbreaker.
They cut our set, you know, and I think John looked at, you know, Dar and Nick and said, hey, dude, let's do that fucking Zeppelin medley. They started out mellow. So if I say to you tomorrow, that night was a big deal.
And if I say to you tomorrow, all the fun Yes, to a castle I will take you. Where wants to be the same. And if I say to you tomorrow, all the fun and what's to stop us from the day? Well, what is and what's to end?
everybody kind of dispersed. We did our thing. Crew was doing, we're all doing our thing. Gary stumbles outside. And he comes out like on, right between like, he's doing this thing. And of course, who does he run into? But, Lemmy Kuhlmeister himself. You guys, right? Fucking lad. This is the real life. This isn't make-believe.
It was disheartening to be treated that way, but we had seen that before. But Gary apparently hadn't, and he got really upset. And we didn't find out till later. He walked off that stage right out the front door, and who does he run into? But Lemmy. Yeah, Lemmy from Motorhead, which wasn't unusual because Lemmy basically lives on the Strip and he hangs out at the Rainbow all the time. Anyway, Lemmy could see he was all upset. He goes, "What's wrong?" And Gary starts going into a diatribe how they treated us so badly, they cut our set short and this and that and the other thing. And Lemmy just looks at him and laughing and goes, something to the effect of, "Hey boy, if you're that big of a pussy and that offended you, it gets way worse than that. You better go home and not come back." Well, that's exactly what Gary did. He went home and he never came back. We literally never saw him again or talked to him again. That was it. He disappeared. So that was the end of the Green. And Nick and I had just basically spun our gears. Nick said, "I'm going to go write some songs." So Nick comes up with a few riffs. Some of them are kind of like Anthrax, kind of speed metal. Some of them are really heavy and doom-like. And some of them are like a horror movie. He was into horror movies. So I said, "Wow, those are pretty good, man. And who's going to sing them?" And he goes, "Oh, I am." They're like, "Yeah." They go, "Well, yeah, okay." He comes back in a couple of weeks and he goes, "I can't really play guitar good enough, and it'd be cool if you'd help me finish these songs." And I said, no problem, dude. They're cool. I would love to work on them. And Nick would come over and just give me ideas and just send me down a path, and I'd write this stuff, and he'd say, yeah, and we'd bat it around and this and that and the other thing. So Von Skeletor is the name we came up with for that project, kind of goofing around. And all of a sudden, all of our friends, everybody that we knew started loving this little project we were working on because it was kind of irreverent and almost punk rock and thrashy, and it was just for fun. It wasn't all that serious like the other bands we had done. Well, we got our friend Cam to play drums and our longtime friend Juan to play bass, and we put together a recording and everybody loved it.
Then we went over to Silver Cloud recording, Joe Floyd. It was kind of tough. I wasn't used to playing quite that aggressively up to that point. And, I had Nick egging me on and John egging me on. And the performance, I think, turned out really good.